You're watching Fox 22, KQFX, where the news comes first.
We determined that no probable cause exists to file any charge against Officer Wilson and returned a no true bill on each of the 5 indictments.
Breaking news tonight on ABC 17 News at 9 on Fox 22. Darren Wilson, the Ferguson police officer who shot and killed Micheal Brown, will not face state charges.
Just about 40 minutes ago, the St. Louis County prosecutor announced the grand jury's decision not to file charges against Officer Wilson. And protests actually began before the announcement. People took to the streets of Ferguson as early as 7 o'clock this evening. Here's a live look there, just showing what the streets are looking right now. Most of the day, we've seen crowds of people stopping traffic and blocking streets. St. Louis media outlets are reporting looting on South Florissant Avenue and that police displaying riot shields and batons are protecting the Ferguson Police Department tonight.
This comes on the heels of Missouri Governor Jay Nixon calling for peace and respect and restraint from demonstrators. We're bringing you team coverage of reaction to the grand jury's decision tonight. Our crews are monitoring the situation in the St. Louis area as well as Columbia and Jefferson City. We'll start with ABC 17's Lucas Geiser, who's been in St. Louis all day in that area. Lucas, what's the scene there?
Joey and Marissa, we are outside the Buzz Westfall Justice Center right now in Clayton. This is the building where Prosecutor Bob McCullough held his news conference to announce that there would be no indictment of Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson. Now, about 200 people showed up outside of the building and hung out in this parking lot here. This is where a number of media outlets have set up their operations, and many people began watching the feeds that those stations started to send out of that news conference. Now, once Prosecutor McCullough announced that there would be no indictment, some people criticized McCullough himself, saying that a special prosecutor should have been put on the case to handle it, some citing McCullough's history with law enforcement. Now, we caught up with State Senator Jamila Nasheed, who was also in the parking lot, who said that while she called for restraint from some of the protesters out there, she wanted them to come out and make their voices heard in this matter, but also said to not damage anyone. She said that this year she would support legislation that would take local prosecutors off of cases involving officer-involved shootings and would have a special prosecutor come in and handle any of those cases. Reporting live here in Clayton, Lucas Geisler, ABC 17 News.
Lucas, thank you. We'll continue to bring you the latest out of St. Louis tonight and as the evening continues.
And we have some live videos of protests and rallies going on in St. Louis as well. And the Brown family released a statement talking about it.
As did the governor.
Yeah, and we have the governor's statement right here. We can take a look at it.
It's actually Micheal Brown here that we have first. And, of course, they say we're profoundly disappointed that the killer of our child will not face the consequences of his actions. We ask that you channel your frustration in ways that will make a positive change, and go on to say we respectfully ask that you please keep your protest peaceful. Answering violence with violence is not the appropriate reaction.
And while unrest has already begun in St. Louis, it's a different scene tonight in mid-Missouri as people are demonstrating in Columbia and Jefferson City.
Citizens gathered at local churches early this evening and watched Governor Nixon call for calm in anticipation of tonight's announcement.
ABC 17's Jillian Fertig started her evening at about 5 o'clock at the Second Baptist Church in Columbia. And Jillian's there live. And what are we seeing, Jillian?
Well, Marissa, this room looks a lot different than it did just a few hours ago. There were about 50 to 60 people in here awaiting that grand jury decision. And when that was announced tonight, lots of different reactions. Some were crying. Then there was also a lot of praying. Now, we talked to a couple of them. We're coming up at 10. We'll hear directly from them. But again, there were about 50, 60 people in here, and they were actually planning to march tonight after the announcement was made. They were planning on going out there right after this. But many of the group here decided they were going to go home. They're going to march tomorrow here starting at 5:30. So we'll continue to follow that. And again, coming up at 10 tonight, we're talking with community leaders about this decision. Reporting live in Columbia, Jillian Fertig, ABC 17 News.
Okay, Jillian, thank you. This is another live look of the unrest. We can call it that right now. We don't have too many reports of violence. We've heard certain things, but this is the scene now live.
Yeah, and Governor Jay Nixon issued a statement, too, following the grand jury's decision. It says, quote, while the 12 men and women on St. Louis County grand jury have concluded their work, the rest of us will have much more work to do in order to use the lessons we have learned these past 4 months to create a safer, stronger, and more united community. He also goes on to say that it's his continued hope and expectation that peace will prevail.
And Emily, you say this is outside the police station in Ferguson. Is that? Okay, there we go. All right. And we're going to continue to check around what's going on here in mid-Missouri. We're going to check out ABC 17's Dan Messinio, who's joining us from Joshua House in Jefferson City, where students gathered in reaction to the decision not to charge Officer Darren Wilson. And Dan, what's the scene there?
Joey, the community here at the Joshua Church in Jefferson City nervously waited for the grand jury's decision tonight. They had their computers out, streaming it live. They had their cell phones. They were checking social media. When the decision came down, I heard audible gasp in the room, people shaking their heads. I talked to one church parishioner. She told me that the shooting of Brown was inhumane. She said she's discouraged and devastated, but she says that tonight, above all nights, people need to come together as one and love one another. Reporting live in Jefferson City at the Joshua House, Dan Messinio, ABC 17 News.
Dan, thank you. We're going to be checking in with all of our crews tonight here on ABC 17 News.
And you can also catch our updates on Facebook, on our mobile app, and also on our website, abc17news.com.
As we're monitoring this, we are feeling those colder temperatures again after the warmer weekend, but we'll be seeing some changes throughout the week.
ABC 17 Storm Track Chief Meteorologist Sharon Ray is tracking those changes in your first full complete forecast. Sharon?
Thank you, Sharon. And we've learned that President Obama is addressing the nation on the situation in Ferguson right now. We'll join him in progress.
Parents have lost more than anyone. We should be honoring their wishes. I also appeal to the law enforcement officials in Ferguson and the region to show care and restraint in managing peaceful protests that may occur. Understand, our police officers put their lives on the line for us every single day. They've got a tough job to do to maintain public safety and hold accountable those who break the law. As they do their jobs in the coming days, they need to work with the community, not against the community, to distinguish the handful of people who may use the grand jury's decision as an excuse for violence, distinguish them from the vast majority who just want their voices heard around legitimate issues in terms of how communities and law enforcement interact. Finally, we need to recognize that the situation in Ferguson speaks to broader challenges that we still face as a nation. The fact is, in too many parts of this country, a deep distrust exists between law enforcement and communities of color. Some of this is the result of the legacy of racial discrimination in this country. And this is tragic because nobody needs good policing more than poor communities with higher crime rates. The good news is we know there are things we can do to help. And I've instructed Attorney General Holder to work with cities across the country to help build better relations between communities and law enforcement. That means working with law enforcement officials to make sure their ranks are representative of the communities they serve. We know that makes a difference. It means working to train officials so that law enforcement conducts itself in a way that is fair to everybody. It means enlisting the community actively on what should be everybody's goal, and that is to prevent crime. And there are good people on all sides of this debate, as well as in both Republican and Democratic parties, that are interested not only in lifting up best practices, because we know that there are communities who've been able to deal with this in an effective way, but also who are interested in working with this administration and local and state officials to start tackling much-needed criminal justice reform. So those should be the lessons that we draw from these tragic events. We need to recognize that this is not just an issue for Ferguson. This is an issue for America. We have made enormous progress in race relations over the course of the past several decades. I have witnessed that in my own life, and to deny that progress, I think, is to deny America's capacity for change. But what is also true is that there are still problems, and communities of color aren't just making these problems up. Separating that from this particular decision, there are issues in which the law too often feels as if it is being applied in a discriminatory fashion. I don't think that's the norm. I don't think that's true for the majority of communities or the vast majority of law enforcement officials, but these are real issues. And we have to lift them up and not deny them or try to tamp them down. What we need to do is to understand them and figure out how do we make more progress. And that can be done. That won't be done by throwing bottles. That won't be done by smashing car windows. That won't be done by using this as an excuse to vandalize property. And it certainly won't be done by hurting anybody. So to those in Ferguson, there are ways of channeling your concerns constructively, and there are ways of channeling your concerns destructively. Micheal Brown's parents understand what it means to be constructive. The vast majority of peaceful protesters, they understand it as well. Those of you who are watching tonight understand that there's never an excuse for violence, particularly when there are a lot of people in goodwill out there who are willing to work on these issues. On the other hand, those who are